Welcome to Cayman Turtle Center.
A day of fun and adventure awaits at Cayman Turtle Center Island Wildlife Encounter. Swim and snorkel alongside sea turtles and other marine life. Meet tropical birds in the aviary, ride our turtle twister water slide, or simply relax by the lagoon. Plan your adventure today.
Visit us online at www.turtle.ky.
Hi, this is Dr. Navi Babulal, and you're listening to The Green Scene, which is aired Saturday at 11 a.m. on Bobo 89.1 FM.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today on Bobo 89.1 FM for The Green Scene. For things coming up at Cayman Turtle Center, we have our kids camp, Camp Shelby, returning this summer. To find out more about Camp Shelby or to register, please visit www.campshelby.com. And a top tip for you guys, if you want to visit the center, if you want to save a little bit of money, especially in this economy, be sure to get yourself an annual pass to the center and enjoy unlimited access all year round.
Hi, I'm Wendy Dandy with the Cayman Turtle Center, and I'm an Education Programs Officer. You're listening to The Green Scene at Bobo 89.1 FM.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Green Scene. My name is Shona, and I'm an Education Programs Officer at the Cayman Turtle Conservation and Education Center. With me this morning is Geddes Hislop, the Curator of Terrestrial Exhibits and Education Programs at Cayman Turtle Center. We're excited to bring you another episode of The Green Scene this morning, and we'll hope that you'll tune in every Saturday at 11 a.m. here on Bobo 89.1 FM, where we talk all about the conservation, wildlife, and more. In each episode, we'll be exploring topics relating to the conservation here in the Cayman Islands, including protecting our natural environment and preserving our culture and heritage, as well as talking all about sea turtles and other native species. And talking about sea turtles, yesterday was World Sea Turtle Day. So on today's show, we'll be talking to you all about sea turtles, a topic that we're all very familiar with. Okay, so welcome, Geddes.
Hey, Shona.
So we recently celebrated World Sea Turtle Day at the center. Can you just tell me a little bit about World Sea Turtle Day and its significance?
Okay, the World Sea Turtle Day. That happens every year on June the 16th. And the background to that is the gentleman named Dr. Archie Carr. He was considered the grandfather of sea turtle conservation, sea turtle research around the world. And June 16th is his birthday. So every year we celebrate World Sea Turtle Day on Dr. Carr's birthday. And he is just the one that pioneered sea turtle research and brought them, basically brought them forward into the highlight, because they, at the time that he was doing this back in the early 80s and so on, people weren't that much into sea turtles, but he's brought up a lot of their significance, and basically just delved into them and found out much more about these enigmatic ocean nomads that people didn't know. So and then people wonder, why sea turtle? Of course, in the Cayman Islands we know about sea turtles. There's a whole list of reasons why we should be celebrating sea turtles, and at the Cayman Turtle Center, of course, that's what we do. Mm-hmm. So we're definitely into World Sea Turtle Day.
Yeah, we work with sea turtles directly, so it would be a bit bad of us if we didn't celebrate the animals that we try to celebrate every single day throughout the year as well. What would you say is the significance of holding World Sea Turtle Day worldwide?
Well, sea turtles represent the ocean, because they occupy all different aspects of the ocean, all the different areas of the ocean, because they're close to shore as well as out in the deep blue pelagic ocean. And they're with all these different species and their impact on the habitat. Plus, they're very ancient species. Some argue that they're the original turtles, because we know that life emerged from the sea onto the land. And just for information, there are actually 3 different types of turtles. Generally speaking, there are the true turtles, as people consider them, are the sea turtles, because they're the original ones. And then on land you have 2 different types. You have the terrapins, which are the pond turtles, like we have Hecates here in the Cayman, And then you have the tortoises, which are completely land turtles, like the big Galapagos turtles that people know about, the ones that walk around with feet like elephants and definitely can't swim. But sea turtles are the ones that we celebrate. Not that we don't, the other turtles aren't important, but for us here in the Cayman, sea turtles are what we celebrate because they represent our ocean. They're on our flag, they're on our coat of arms, they're on our currency, they're in the name of so many things Caymanian. We definitely have to celebrate them.
Yeah, I mean, we celebrate sea turtles because we work with them, but sea turtles are very much the reason the Cayman Islands were discovered. Were they not?
Oh, yeah, because Ferdinand Columbus took notice of the islands, were the sister islands, because of all the sea turtles in the waters around the islands. At that time, they estimated maybe around 2 million. So they were definitely noticeable. Because you can imagine the impact that day when they were lost, of course, because they're trying to find their way to the Columbus Channel, coming from Central America, and the storm blew them a little bit off course, so they passed by the sister islands. They would probably have seen Cayman Brac in the distance, and as they got a little closer, they heard these things banging off the hull of their ship, and they thought they hit a reef. And imagine them looking over and seeing the so many sea turtles, their backs in the water look like an actual reef. They thought they could walk to the shore on the backs of these turtles. That's a little different from what we see today. Sure. And so definitely at the Turtle Center, we have, like you said, Sean, it's what we work with every day. So we definitely have to celebrate them.
And one of the main things we want to do for World Sea Turtle Day is just to raise awareness about these remarkable creatures that we interact with so much and the challenges that they face out in the wild. Yeah,
definitely. Because we look at sea turtles, it's not just sea turtles. These are what we call an ambassador species. An ambassador species is basically something that represents its habitat and all the other creatures they're in. So, for example, if you think of whales, when you think of whales, you think of the big open ocean, and because that's where whales usually are, and it connects you with their habitat. Sea turtles, like I said, they occupy every aspect of the ocean because they come up on the beach at night to lay their eggs. They're in the near shore areas feeding in the shallow seas. They're out in the ocean, in the deep oceans, doing their walkabout or swim about as they go on their journeys from all around the world. So sea turtles represent ocean conservation. So that's another reason why we celebrate them. They're not just significant, and they're not only significant to the Cayman Islands. Our culture is closely entwined with them, but there are other even indigenous island communities like the Polynesians, the Maoris in New Zealand, in the Philippines. Some of the indigenous tribes there, they all revere sea turtles because of what they represent. So you definitely need lots of reasons to celebrate sea turtles.
And I also think it's really beautiful if any of our listeners are snorkelers or divers. Even though I see sea turtles practically every single day, when I'm snorkeling, and especially diving when I'm not expecting it, whenever I see a sea turtle, I get insanely excited because it's just beautiful to see them out there and doing what they're meant to do.
Yeah, they're one of the iconic species, like when you go to a zoo, they say that if you go to a zoo, there's certain animals that people expect to see at a zoo, like lions, for example. Tigers, elephants, bears. Otherwise, the zoo is kind of not really a zoo, in people's eyes. Well, in the ocean, there are certain iconic species that people like to see, like whales, dolphins, and sea turtles, because nobody's afraid of sea turtles. They're not intimidating, but they are. But like you said, just to see a sea turtle, it's just a cool, exciting thing. It doesn't give you a heart or adrenaline rush like a shark, but it certainly gives you a nice little endorphin kick when you see a sea turtle just lazily swim by.
Exactly. But even though they're so remarkable out in the wild, the odds are forever against a sea turtle out there. Yeah,
because it says the generally accepted stats is that 1 in 1,000 sea turtles hatched on a beach will make it to adulthood to return to that beach to lay their eggs. So they're ready, and that's just looking at all the natural hazards they have to go through. like the weather, the ocean currents, predators, that kind of thing. And then you add the new man-made stuff to them: boat strikes, fishing lines, plastics, and then climate change on top of that, ocean warming affecting their food, and maybe affecting their nesting habitat, where beaches getting washed away, as we see in some parts of Cayman. So yeah, they have everything stacked against them, and all sea turtles are considered pretty much endangered. So yeah, celebrating World Sea Turtle Day brings that attention. And again, by protecting sea turtles, in order to protect sea turtles, we have to take the animal's habitat into consideration, which benefits us as well.
Exactly. Not many people realize just the impact sea turtles have, not only on the marine environment, but also us as humans as well. So guys, I'm afraid we have to take a break, but in the next few moments we'll be back and we'll talk about all the species of sea turtles and tell you a little bit more about them.
Welcome to Cayman Turtle Center.
A day of fun and adventure awaits at Cayman Turtle Center Island Wildlife Encounter. Swim and snorkel alongside sea turtles and other marine life. Meet tropical birds in the aviary, ride our turtle twister water slide, or simply relax by the lagoon. Plan your adventure today.
Visit us online at www.turtle.ky.
Did you know that turtles play an important role in ocean ecosystems? Turtles maintain healthy seagrass beds and coral reefs, providing key habitat for other marine life and helping to balance marine food webs and nutrient cycling. Learn more about our turtle friends at the Cayman Turtle Center.
Hello, my name is Coco. I'm a Cayman parrot at the Cayman Turtle Center. I was rescued and love my home here. Did you know our human friends at the center breed and raise Cayman parrots, the national bird of the Cayman Islands, then release them to live in the wild? Come visit me and my bird friends at Cayman Turtle Center.
Welcome everyone, my name is Shona and I'm one of the Education Programs Officers at Cayman Turtle Conservation and Education Center. And with me this morning is Geddes Hislop. He also works with me and he's the Curator of Terrestrial Exhibits and Educational Programs at Cayman Turtle Center. Now this morning we're talking all about sea turtles because we recently celebrated World Sea Turtle Day. And not many people would be surprised just how many sea turtles there are out there in the marine environment. There are about 7 species of sea turtles, right?
Yeah, there are 7 different species. And because I think you're right. Not many people realize how many different types of sea turtles there are. And each one is different. Mm-hmm. Each one is a different function. I mean, they look like a sea turtle, obviously. But each one is a completely different species. It has a completely different habitat. I mean, they all do certain things the same because they all use the ocean. They all come up on the beach to lay their eggs, but their diets, their shape, their sizes, shapes, their habits, they're all different. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting.
So across the world, there are 7 species of sea turtle. There's the green sea turtle, the loggerhead sea turtle, the hawksbill sea turtle, the leatherback sea turtle, the olive ridley sea turtle, the Kemp's ridley sea turtle, and then the flatback sea turtle.
Yeah, and the first 4 you mentioned, the green, loggerhead, hawksbill, and leatherback, those are the ones that you can see in the waters around the Cayman Islands. Well, the hard, because there's the hard shell turtles, which are the green, the loggerhead, and the hawksbills, and those are the ones that nest in the Cayman Islands or have records of nesting in the Cayman Islands. Leatherbacks, people have seen them occasionally, but they don't necessarily nest here. I know they do nest down the Eastern Caribbean, and such as Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and islands further down, Grenada, so on. Trinidad has the largest leatherback turtle nesting population in the region for that species. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen a leatherback. I have.
They are massive.
They're massive. If you ever see a leatherback turtle, you know what a dinosaur looks like, because they're the largest of all the sea turtle species. And the cool thing about them is that they're pelagic. Pelagic means that they're open ocean wanderers. They don't hang around close to shore unless it's breeding season. And they find most sea turtles are warm water animals because, being reptiles, generally speaking, they're what people call cold-blooded or ectothermic. So they're very sensitive to temperature. So they usually exist in waters within a certain temperature, generally in the tropics. But leatherbacks, their metabolism is a bit different. And you can find leatherbacks off the coast of Scotland. Mm-hmm. Mind you, they're in the Gulf Stream, which is slightly warmer. But still, that's cold water where you don't find any other type of sea turtle. And the cool thing about leatherbacks is that they eat jellyfish.
Jellyfish and salps.
Fish and salps. That's all they eat. So we want leatherbacks out there because we don't like getting stung. It's great.
So leatherbacks are actually a keystone species in terms of controlling jellyfish populations across the world.
Yes, in the open ocean, sure. Yeah.
Now, all sea turtles really love jellyfish. They're like candy, but the leatherback sea turtle really specializes in it. But you did say they're one of the more prehistoric looking sea turtles. They're the only living species of sea turtle that has a softer shell.
Yeah.
All of the others have a hard shell.
Yeah, the name pretty much describes it, leatherback. Well, I liken it to, if you want to know what a leatherback shell feels like, if you have sneakers or running shoes, just bang on the bottom of that. And that's what it feels like. It's kind of a hard, rubbery surface. And these things, like I said, these things are massive because they weigh up to 1,800 pounds. That's a lot of turtle. And I can also say that I have had the privilege, or not privilege, of having a leatherback stand on my foot because I got too close to one that was nesting. And it started to move, and they can move surprisingly fast for something so big. So before I knew it, she had stepped on my foot, and that hurt.
I bet.
Even standing in sand. That's a lot of pound of turtle on you.
So if anyone wants to understand just how prehistoric looking leatherback sea turtles are, Google them, but also then Google Archelon, which is a prehistoric species of sea turtle. And the images that come up with that are fairly similar. They both have those smooth, relatively flatter, leathery shells.
Yeah.
Now with Archelon, it's a bit harder to determine what their leathery shell was used for because they're not around anymore. But the leatherback, their shell is like the way it is for a very special reason.
Yeah, they dive really deep. And yeah, so if you think of a submarine, for example, to get a submarine to go really deep, the deeper it goes, the greater the water pressure, and you have to reinforce the shell of that submarine. So leatherbacks, like most deep diving animals, for example, sperm whales, they actually go the other way. They have a flexible shell, so that when the water pressure impacts them, their bodies actually, well, I guess contort might be the word, but not quite. They actually contort a bit so that they can absorb some of that pressure rather than fighting against it, so to speak. So that's a pretty cool adaptation. But it is an animal that lives out in the deep open ocean. Mm-hmm. So like you said, all the turtles are different because they all have different habits.
Yeah, and one of my favorite species is actually the Kemp's Ridley sea turtle, the considered rarest sea turtle species in the world.
Yeah. What do you like about those guys?
That they're the rarest sea turtle species in the world. But also, we were fortunate enough at Cayman Turtle Center to also have a few as part of a breeding program. So because we were having such success breeding the green sea turtle in captivity, we were kindly given some Kemp's Ridley sea turtles in the hopes that we would get them to breed at the center. And we were the first place to successfully get the Kemp's Ridleys to breed and managed to send back a few head-started Kemps back to Mexico to be released into the wild. But the Kemps have a very interesting nesting behavior that they do, don't they?
Yeah, they have something called an arrebata. If I'm pronouncing that right, but it just means arrival. So when they nest in mass. I mean in mass, like hundreds of turtles come up on the beaches in Mexico at the same time on the Pacific, on the Caribbean side, and I think their counterpart, the olive ridley on the Pacific side, does the same thing. Mm-hmm. But they nest in big numbers, and that most people consider that a sort of survival strategy, because there are so many females up on the beach nesting at the same time. A predator can only take so many turtles at one time. One single turtle is easily targeted, but when you have hundreds, it's almost like, like pick up sticks. You don't know which one to do and where to go. And if you take just one, well, that's not as much of an impact.
Yeah.
But it's probably something that one of those things of nature that's just fascinating to watch. Seeing all these turtles coming out, just streaming out of the water.
The downside to Kemps is just how small their nesting habitat is. It is just the Gulf of Mexico, although we are seeing them starting to stretch up into Texas-y area, but in much smaller numbers.
Yeah, that's true. That's the other side of it. That's the downside of it. It makes them very vulnerable to habitat loss and any effects in their habitat, because they need those nesting. There's only certain nesting beaches that they come up on. They have to be, I guess, wide enough or large enough to accommodate the numbers. So anything that affects the population drastically.
And unlike the leatherbacks that just eat jellyfish, the Kemp's ridleys are a carnivorous species.
Yeah.
So they really like eating things like shrimp and crabs and fish.
Yeah, I remember the ones we had at the center, they loved shrimp.
Shrimp was their absolute favorite.
Yep, they would drop everything else and wait for the shrimp to arrive.
Feeding time with the Kemps was one of my favorite things, although it was a little bit aggravating because they move like sloths when they're eating, or at least ours did. They were really slow to grab food. And you're like, how do you ever hunt in the wild? But they were really incredible to work with, and it was really fun when it was their feeding time there. But another species we have here in the Cayman Islands is the loggerhead sea turtle.
Yeah, loggerheads. And it's interesting because most of the turtles, all their names pretty much describe them, except for a couple of them. But loggerheads, the name tells you they have a huge head compared to the other turtles.
Massive.
Portion of the head to their body is much different. If you compare a green turtle and a loggerhead side by side, one just has a fat head. But that speaks to their diet, because loggerheads love shellfish, crustaceans, so on, and that big head supports massive jaws that have probably the most powerful bite force of all the sea turtles, and certainly some of other animals. Because loggerheads, it says, a full-grown loggerhead can bite through a conch shell.
Yeah, definitely would want to be bitten by one.
You definitely don't want to put your hand in there.
But by eating these animals, they actually play a huge role in nutrient recycling in the marine environment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and they control numbers as well, because you don't want an overpopulation of anything. That's when they talk about keeping things in balance. Everything needs to be in balance. You can't have too many, you can't have too little. And loggerheads, by eating crustaceans, so on, they keep their numbers in check, keep them from overeating a resource. And nutrient cycling, because what goes in comes out at the other end and nourishes their environment. It's like cows in a pasture.
Yep.
Cows eat the grass and then they defecate, and that nourishes the soil so more grass can grow.
And turtles are very messy eaters, so by eating these hard-shelled prey, they're essentially breaking their shells into much smaller pieces, allowing them to break down quicker as opposed to being a whole piece. And you'll sort of notice a trend when we're talking about sea turtles that each of them plays a really important role. So speaking of that, we're going to head into the hawksbill sea turtle, which is one of the smaller species with a really beautiful shell pattern. Yeah,
hawksbills have been persecuted. Well, first of all, hawksbills even today are still considered a critically endangered species, but they are persecuted differently from other sea turtles, not for their meat, but more for their shell. Like I said, the beautiful pattern. The shell was used in all kinds of artwork, furniture, even guitar picks. All kinds of things were made from hawksbill shell because they have certainly the most beautiful shell of all, colored shell of all the turtles. And but hawksbills have a really weird diet.
They do.
Yeah, they're spongivores, which means they eat sea sponges. So, yeah, when we tell that to the school kids, they're thinking, okay, you eat the sponge that you wash your dishes with?
Yeah.
Well, or they eat SpongeBob. That's
eat
what they do.
SpongeBob.
They eat SpongeBob. Yeah, but again, sponges on a reef, they can grow and take over a reef. So yeah, keeping everything in balance. The hawksbills eat sponges, keep them from overwhelming a reef, and again, nutrient recycling. Of course, just like you mentioned, all those other turtles, they love jellyfish for dessert. And I'm sure if they come across a crab or a fish or something, they wouldn't say no. But their primary diet is sponges. And just imagine, I mean, you look at sponges, I'm sure, well, if you ever go beach combing, especially on the south coast or on the east end, you'd probably come across a sponge someone's washed up on the beach, and you wonder who would eat that. What do you get out of it? But like I said, nature is very efficient.
Yeah.
They have somebody to do some job, and the fact that hawksbills are here doing that job means that there's a reason for it. If they weren't, they would be fired. And fired means in nature means you go extinct. So just the fact that they're still around means that their job is important.
And hawksbills are one of the only marine animals that does eat primarily sea sponges, because I don't think they're glass fiber, but they're glass-like fibers. So many species of animals can't eat them. So hawksbills really do specialize in eating sea sponges, and these sponges can actually outcompete corals on a coral reef. So by having hawksbills out there to eat them, and specially made to eat them too, they have really small heads and small necks to be able to get into these crevices for these sponges. They help keep our coral reefs healthy for all the other animals that live out there too.
That's for sure.
And the final species we have here in the Cayman Islands is obviously the iconic green sea turtle.
Yeah, the green sea turtle, which is on our flag. There is a green turtle on our flag, and it's symbolic because the green turtle is not actually green.
No.
Right. So they're called green sea turtles because when the European explorers first encountered them, they thought they were, they wanted to eat them. So they finally figured out a way to get hold of one, and when they opened them up, they found that they had green body fat. That's where the name came from. So many of the times we ask people, why do you think they're called green turtles? Because they're green. They're actually brown, sometimes yellow. We even have a couple of black ones. But yeah, it's their body fat. And it's sometimes in some ways they say that's attributed to their diet because they're marine herbivores. Very important, just like you mentioned with the hawksbill, very important for maintaining a balance of algae and other plants that might smother a coral reef. But they're also, the old Caymanians call them sea buffaloes because they graze. They're one of the few animals, I think they're the only sea turtle, apart from maybe the Kemp's Ridleys, that naturally gather in big numbers, because most sea turtles are solitary, as far as I know. But a long time ago, there was even a term for them. They called it bales, a bale of turtles, just like a pod of whales. The thing is, you very rarely see bales of turtles anymore because they're all endangered species. But greens are also very important for maintaining seagrass beds, because just like you mow your lawn to keep your lawn healthy, they eat the seagrass beds and keep those habitats healthy to benefit other species as well. Just like some people, the old term, people put cattle in a field to keep the grass down, keep the grass and keep that field from overgrowing. It's the same thing with the sea turtles.
Yeah, green turtles eat green things.
Yeah,
that's the easiest way to remember it.
Yeah, good one. Easy, green turtles eat green things.
But even though they're all so different and unique in their feeding styles and how they impact the marine environment, they live exclusively in the ocean, hence the name sea turtles. But they do come up on land occasionally. The females do anyway. The males don't have to. But the females will come up on land.
Yeah. So even though they live in the ocean, they need the land to reproduce. So what that says to me is that we have to consider the ocean from the beach, or maybe even from the tree line, all the way into the deep blue sea. You can't just think about, when you think about conservation and ocean conservation for these animals, you have to protect their entire habitat. Because it's great. At the center, we breed these animals and we release them into the wild. That's our job. But, you can't just release them out there and forget about where they live. Because, we're not putting them into a swimming pool. We're putting them into the ocean. And they use the whole ocean. Anybody who's ever watched Finding Nemo knows that the sea turtles can be found way out at sea, following the ocean currents, wandering far and wide. And, green turtles anyway, and definitely leatherbacks. So they're all out there, but they have to come back in close to shore to feed. In the case of the animals, in the case of things like loggerheads and hawksbills, they hang around the reefs, which is a shallow sea. And the greens especially come even closer because seagrass that they feed on, the sea plants that they feed on, can only grow at a certain depth. Because the light has to be able to penetrate far down enough for that stuff to grow. So turtles represent the entire ocean. And so when you think about sea turtles and sea turtle conservation, you have to think of the conservation of the entire ecosystem.
So let's just describe the wild sea turtle life cycle, for example.
It's fairly simple. And this is the model that we use at the Turtle Center in our breeding program. So, for example, in the Cayman Islands, generally speaking, between May to October, sometimes even as early as late April, is the breeding season, which is happening now. Right? So hence World Sea Turtle Day is in the middle of the breeding season. So females will come up on the beach to lay their eggs. In the wild, they'll do that anywhere from 3 to 5, maybe 6 times for that during that season, because they will take about 2 weeks break in between layings, and they will lay anywhere from 60 to say 100 eggs, depending on the size of the female, the age of the female. Digging a 3-foot deep hole in the sand to cover those eggs, to put those eggs into the egg chamber, and then they dip out.
They abandon them.
They cover it up and have a nice life, and I'm out. And they leave them. There's no parental care.
No.
But that's the reason why they lay so many eggs, because it's quantity over quality. If you compare them to birds, for example, that also lay eggs. Birds lay eggs in the nest, and they incubate those eggs, they raise the chicks, they feed them, they put time and effort, protect them, teach them how to survive, and then they're gone. So they invest a lot of time and energy. The turtles do a different strategy. They put their energy into producing mass numbers of eggs. So at the Turtle Center, our females lay their eggs in our beach. When you come to the Turtle Center, the first thing you see is that big pond with the artificial beach. They lay in on that sand there. They dig the nest just like they've done for millennia, and we collect the eggs and take them to a hatchery. But in the wild, they would lay the eggs. The eggs would hatch out after roughly 2 months, depending on what the weather is like. And those little hatchlings climb out of the sand, run down the beach, and disappear.
And that's all instinct for them.
Yeah, that's all instinct, because they've never seen the ocean. They don't even know where it is, because they've been down in a hole in the sand for the last 2 months. They pop out, and when you think about it, that's really fascinating. It's a little thing about the size of an Oreo cookie, and never seen the world before, but knows instinctively where to go and what to do. That's really amazing. So,
yeah.
And then once they hit the water, they call it the lost years. With the work we've been doing and as researchers have been doing around the world, we have a better idea of what happens. But they basically disappear into the ocean, stay close to shore for a while, then as they get bigger, they disappear. They go out into the deeper ocean, and then they come back when they're somewhere between 20 to 30 years old as adults, if they survive.
Yeah.
And then they come back to the beach where they lay their eggs, which is an amazing thing too, because when they leave, they're about the size of an Oreo cookie, can fit in the palm of your hand. When they come back, they're weighing well over 100 pounds, which is a lot of growth. Again, how do you remember that after all that time?
So the process Geddes is talking about with nesting is called natal homing. So the female will come back to the beach she was born or released on to come and lay her eggs. And us as scientists, we've done a lot of research into it. I don't think, not us specifically, I meant the collective scientists and science community has done work into looking why sea turtles might be doing it. And I don't think we have a concrete explanation. There are a few theories, one of which being that they have magnetic crystals in their brain, so magnetite crystals, that help them detect magnetic fields. We for sure know that they detect magnetic fields, which is how they come back here to lay their eggs. And it's also one of the ways they orientate themselves in the ocean in the first place.
Yeah, they're a built-in compass or GPS, so to speak. Yeah, but coming back to the beach, another theory, coming back to the same beach is also a survival strategy, because theoretically, if your parents were able to find a good beach to lay the eggs on, it makes sense that you would come back and try the same spot.
It's true. I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah, because if you find a beach, if for example you find a tree with lots of mangoes, right, you definitely go back there to check on mangoes. And fishermen can relate to that. They all have their favorite fishing spot. They keep going back to that. So it makes sense that the turtles will want to come back to the same beach to lay their eggs.
Exactly. Well, guys, I'm afraid we're going to have to take another break. But when we come back, we're going to talk about the conservation efforts for sea turtles, but also the threats affecting them in the wild. So stay tuned, and we'll be back in the next few moments on Bobo 89.1 FM with The Green Scene.
Did you know that turtles play an important role in ocean ecosystems? Turtles maintain healthy seagrass beds and coral reefs, providing key habitat for other marine life and helping to balance marine food webs and nutrient cycling. Learn more about our turtle friends at the Cayman Turtle Center.
Hello, my name is Coco. I'm a Cayman parrot at the Cayman Turtle Center. I was rescued and love my home here. Did you know our human friends at the center breed and raise Cayman parrots, the national bird of the Cayman Islands, then release them to live in the wild? Come visit me and my bird friends at Cayman Turtle Center.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to The Green Scene. My name is Shona, and today I'm joined with Geddes Hislop, the curator of terrestrial exhibits and education programs at Cayman Turtle Center. So far, we've touched upon just the importance of sea turtles to the marine environment. So if anyone hasn't been here for the whole entire time, can we just briefly talk about how important they are out there in the ocean?
Yeah, well, sea turtles, because they utilize the whole ocean, they're an indication of the health of the oceans. Just as the presence of sea turtles can tell you, they need healthy oceans. So healthy oceans, they can be considered, I guess, in a sense, an indicator species, because they utilize the ocean all the way from the beach to the deep blue sea. But they're also considered a keystone species, which means they have an important impact on the environment. And we talked earlier about leatherbacks.
Yeah.
Different ways that they're so important, because they control their prey and keep a balance in the ecosystem. Leatherbacks controlling numbers of jellyfish, hawksbill controlling the spread of sponges on a reef, and they also help nesting beaches, because they lay their eggs in the beach. They dig up the sand, they turn over sand. When they lay their eggs, those eggs hatch out, and the leftover shells provide nourishment, kind of like fertilizer. Even they themselves are also provide food, not the adults for sure, because very few animals can eat a large sea turtle. Maybe some species of sharks, but the hatchlings are basically fish food, and that's why they lay so many. Because while you're eating, Peter gets away, kind of thing. So they provide food for a lot of animals.
It's sad to think about, but they do. They're a pretty important staple to many fish species.
Yeah. You can compare them probably to, say, guppies in a swamp or bait fish. That's why they produce so many, because they know. Well, not that they know, but a lot of them are going to get eaten. But just by sheer numbers, they survive. They're important for from a cultural and socioeconomic aspect, sea turtles are very important because there are some cultures like the Cayman Islands that are so intimately entwined with the sea turtles as a source of food and nourishment, and even driving an economy at one time. And then you have the others like the Polynesians that worship sea turtles. Well, I don't know if worship is the right word, but certainly revere them because of what they represent. And turtles, we all know that in mythology and stories, turtles represent wisdom and patience, simply because we know that turtles take their time to do things. So there's a cultural aspect of it. And then, and of course we talked about our iconic green turtle, being the lawnmowers of the sea, maintaining those seagrass meadows, keep them healthy so we can benefit by having good habitat for fish to breed, so we can enjoy them on our reefs and enjoy fishing for them.
Exactly. So all species of sea turtle, as Geddes touched upon, are keystone species. If you don't know what keystone species is, because us scientists come up with really funny words to mean simple things, it just means they are important to the health and well-being of their environment, and without them, it struggles to operate correctly and can sometimes even cease to exist altogether. So I sort of use the metaphor of keystone species being like the piece in the game of Jenga that you pull that makes everything fall apart. So if you lose Jenga, essentially, the piece that you pull, if you take sea turtles out of the equation, our marine environment's in a lot of trouble because they're very beneficial to the health of it. Yeah,
and in more ways than one. Not just as we did touch on it earlier, but I just want to reiterate it. It's not just what goes into the sea turtles in terms of what they eat, but also what comes out of the sea turtles, because they're recycling nutrients. Nutrients are important for the health of the reef and the environment that they're in. So just like, again, this example is just like cows or goats grazing on the grass, and their defecation helps nourish the grass so it can regrow. Same thing with green turtles eating the seagrass and defecating, and that nourishes their habitats.
Yeah. And the downside to being a sea turtle hatchling or egg is your survival rate from hatching is estimated to be maybe 1 in 1,000. And that's if we're being optimistic. Their only real predators as a large turtle are, say, sharks and big cetaceans, or sometimes even humans through poaching. But it's not just natural predators sea turtles have to be worried about. They have many threats out there in the ocean, and all of them have to do with us as humans. So what are some of the threats that face sea turtles out there in the open ocean?
Primary one is today is plastics. Yeah. Because plastics are, marine pollution in general is bad, but plastics are the top of that list. Sea turtles they're grazers. They love, as you mentioned, they love jellyfish. Plastic bags look like a jellyfish to a short-sighted sea turtle, and they try to ingest them. And of course, I don't know if anybody's ever tried to eat a plastic bag. I hope they haven't. But it's not a good thing to ingest. It's indigestible. So it basically clogs up your intestines, and they feel like they're full, or it creates what vets will call, or doctors will call, an impaction, and just basically blocks it. Yeah. So that nothing can go through, and the animal slowly starves to death. Plastics also in the terms of fishing lines. Our local Department of Environment has started a program some years ago to encourage people to collect fishing lines and recycle them. Yeah. And ghost lines, or ghost nets as they call them, wrap around sea turtles and literally grow into their flesh. Impact them, and it's a horrible way to and probably very painful. So, and in case they think it's not just floating plastics also settle along to the bottom, and then we have animals like the hawksbills and the green turtles that graze on the reef and graze on the sea bass beds, and they will pick up those plastics that drop on the reef or drop on seagrass. Yeah. Most of the time when turtles when turtles they find dead turtles, a lot of the times they open them up and there's plastics all through all in the animal's digestive tract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not just even them confusing for food. As you said, it's them grazing on their natural food and accidentally ingesting it. The downside to being an incredibly well-adapted animal for the marine environment, like a sea turtle is that they have these really incredible throats that help them keep food down but push up extra salt water. The downside to that is it keeps the plastics in their stomach too, and they can't pass it. So it does make them feel full when they're not, and can sometimes lead to ruptures, as you stated. But it's not even big pieces of plastic that are impacting turtles. We're also talking about microplastics. So for the longest time, we thought plastic broke down, and we weren't exactly wrong. It just didn't break down into nothing. It just breaks down into much smaller plastic particles, which have been found in all 7 species of sea turtle, also at all life stages. And the rate at which pollution is entering our oceans is scary. I mean, it's estimated between 8 to 11 million tons of pollution enters our oceans every year, and 80% of that comes from land. And it's not just turtles that are affected by it, but they definitely are impacted.
Yeah, well, definitely, as you said, turtles, they use all aspects of the ocean. So if they have plastics, it just means that everybody else does.
Another thing with sea turtles is you could put them together essentially sometimes as climate change and also habitat loss.
No, definitely.
So definitely in the Cayman Islands, we've noticed the effects of losing our beaches and beaches becoming much shorter. Look at outside the Marriott Hotel, the beach lost there. So beach erosion is really catastrophic for sea turtles in terms of them losing their nesting habitat. As we discussed earlier, if you weren't here, sea turtles do a process called natal homing, which means they come back to the beach they were born or released on to lay their eggs. So if a turtle is returning, I know maybe a little bit over 10 years ago, there was a beach at Marriott. Turtles take about 15 to 30 years to become mature in the wild. If those turtles are coming back to that beach, there's no beach to nest on.
Yeah.
So they're losing their vital nesting habitat.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And they're an animal that they don't adapt very quickly. That's the thing, because animals that adapt usually takes a generation or so. Unless you're an intelligent species like whales or chimpanzees that can adapt through culture and experience. But ancient species like sea turtles, they're pretty much set in their ways. So it's a little harder for them to adapt, to find a different beach or somewhere else to go. I'm sure they will, but the majority of them probably won't get it that easily.
Yeah.
So conserving these animals is a key issue, especially here in the Cayman Islands, because of our close association with sea turtles. And again, by conserving sea turtles, you conserve their habitat, and their habitat is the ocean. By conserving the ocean, it benefits us in many different ways. Like you mentioned, the beach erosion. If we can find a way to mitigate the effects of the erosion on the beaches, it benefits not just the sea turtles, but it benefits us as well, because tourists like beaches, if only just for that.
Tourists also like turtles.
And they also like turtles, that's for sure. And that's where the work at the Turtle Center comes in, because releasing turtles into the wild, they're just the presence of sea turtles out there, as you mentioned, helps mitigate some of the effects of climate change. Because, for example, green turtles grazing on seagrass beds and keeping them healthy. Seagrass beds secure the seafloor and keep sand erosion at bay, and they also help by having a stable floor. They also help reduce the impact of storm surges on the beach, on the coastline. Just because they have a sea turtle, they are grazing on grass. So there are a lot of side benefits that people don't consider. And if you look at it from in terms of the socioeconomic side, like you said, people love sea turtles. So you mentioned earlier about snorkeling and seeing a sea turtle, and we live here. Mm-hmm. So it's a cool thing for it's a cool thing for us. It's a really cool thing for somebody from a city somewhere in Europe or in North America who's never seen a sea turtle live, to see one just suddenly swim by in front of them. Mm-hmm. You know, and Cayman Islands is perfectly poised for that because of the programs that we're doing at the Turtle Center.
Yeah, so at the center this year, we're celebrating or coming up on 55 years of conservation of the green sea turtle, which is a massive achievement. But we started our program in 1968. And I know through the sea turtle nest monitoring of the Cayman Islands Department of Environment, in 1999, there was only one recorded green turtle nest. So green turtles were essentially considered functionally extinct. So what does functionally extinct mean?
Yeah, that means that you might see one or two around, but they're not enough to make a difference. So they're not enough of that species or whatever to repopulate itself. It's like the last few, basically. So they're if something drastic doesn't happen, they're on their way out. The blue iguana is another example of that, because I think when they started their program, they started with something like 15 or 20 blue iguanas, which are essentially the last of their kind on the planet. So they were functionally extinct, because if we didn't have human intervention, we would not have them. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And same thing with sea turtles around the Cayman Islands. They're in other areas. They just weren't here.
Yeah.
So, and we know we've already reiterated, gone through why they're important. So, yeah, imagine having a turtle on your flag and there's no turtles around the island. So we had to have them. And when you think about it, I believe, just as a side thing, 55 years. I think the Turtle Center would be the oldest species conservation program in the Cayman Islands, if you think of it that way. Because I can't think of anything else that specifically targets the conservation of a species in that way that's been here in the Cayman Islands. I mean, we have the blue iguana, we have also the Turtle Center, we do the parrots. Mm-hmm. But I mean, sea turtle conservation was probably the first organized and longest running species conservation program in the Cayman Islands.
We've definitely been running a very long time with 55 years. But since that whole entire time frame, we started our release programs sort of around 1980s.
Yeah.
And since then, we've released over 36,000 green sea turtles into the waters around the Cayman Islands, not just in Grand Cayman, but also Little Cayman and Cayman Brac. And we have various types of release programs at the center that we carry out, about 4 different types. So can you just tell everyone a little bit about the release programs?
Okay, well, we release turtles at various stages of their life cycle, from the eggs to the hatchlings to what we call head starts. So with the eggs, what we do is at our hatchery, as I mentioned earlier, we have our own artificial beach, our own inland sea at the Turtle Center, where the breeder pond, where basically the parents are. So when we have the turtles take roughly 2 months, about 50 to 60 days for the eggs to incubate and the babies to start hatching out. So what we do is we take eggs that are within 7 days or so ready to hatch, before they're ready to hatch, and we do what we call a translocation. When a turtle lays an egg, lays a group of eggs, it's called a clutch. So what we do is we split a clutch. Half of the clutch, let's just say it's 100 eggs, half of the clutch will stay at the Turtle Center in the controlled environment of our hatchery. The other half of the clutch, we will create an artificial, a man-made turtle nest on the beach and plant the eggs there. So by studying the turtle nests we have at the Turtle Center, we've estimated that the average depth of a nest is about 36 inches, roughly 3 feet, because they go anywhere from 32 inches all the way up to 38 inches deep, I guess, depending on the turtle. So the average depth is about 3 feet deep. So we would dig a hole 3 feet deep, making sure we create the egg chamber and everything, and put the eggs in there, and then cover them up and keep a watch on them to see what happens. So at the center, the eggs from that very same clutch, when they hatch out, theoretically the eggs in the sand are hatching at the same time. But the difference is the ones on the beach have to climb up through 3 feet of sand. So even though they might hatch the same time, they won't emerge until a couple of nights later. And so that's what we call our nest translocations. And the hatchlings emerge out onto the beach. We have watchers, volunteers that help us every year to do that, and they run out into the ocean. So it's a natural process. It gives us an idea of how much our program parallels what's happening in the wild. The other one we do is we take the actual hatchlings that we get up from our hatchery, so the sterile environment of the hatchery. They hatch at the center after 3-4 days. Once we make sure the hatchlings are healthy and strong, we will collect them and take them down to a beach at night. And in the dark section of the beach, we will release them onto the sand and let them crawl their way in. And that speaks back to that natal homing you spoke about earlier. Because one of the questions you get is, how come these turtles are being raised in a hatchery? How are they going to find their way back? Well, we know that we have an idea of the process. We don't know exactly how it works, but we know that the imprinting takes place somewhere between these little guys coming out of the sand and getting to the ocean. At least that's what we think. So we give them the opportunity to crawl their way into the sand, from the sand into the beach. And so far, we've got a pretty good idea that it works. So that's what we call the night releases. And people can join us to watch that. That's a pretty cool thing, to watch these little guys. It's like a little mini turtle race. See them all crawling down the sand into the sea. One we haven't done for a while, since before COVID, is what we call the jump starts, where we take hatchlings and give them a jump start. Basically, what it means is taking them from the beach out into the sargassum that they're looking for. Because when they crawl into the beach at night, when they crawl off the beach at night into the water, they swim like crazy, and they swim into the current, surprisingly. And the reason they're doing that is because by doing it that way, they have a good chance of running into a mat of sargassum floating along in the currents. And that's where they live. Sargassum is like a floating forest. It's its own ecosystem. So once the baby turtles get into there, that's where they live until they get bigger and stronger, and then they can come back close to shore and begin behaving a little more like adult turtles once they have a hard shell. So we give them the opportunity to skip all the swimming and all the ducking and dodging of predators, and give them a head start to get into that sargassum. Basically take them on a boat and drop them off in the sargassum. And then the final one that most people will see, and what we did there on World Sea Turtle Day yesterday, is a head start release. And that's at the center. We've raised the turtles until they're about 2 to 3 years old, and at that time they're weighing anywhere between 30 to 40 plus pounds, and that's given them a head start in life. So they go from the size of an Oreo cookie, fish food, to maybe about the size of a steering wheel or bigger. And at that point, they're bigger, stronger, faster with a hard shell. Very few predators can harass them, apart from large sharks, and they have a much better chance of survival. So most people have seen the head starts, but not very many people have seen the other ones.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that. I am afraid once again we have to go into another break, but when we come back, we'll be talking a little bit further about our conservation successes, but also some of our favorite things about sea turtles and working with sea turtles. So we'll see you guys in a few moments on Bobo 89.1 FM.
Hi, you're listening to The Green Scene on Bobo 89.1 FM, brought to you by the Cayman Turtle Conservation and Education Center. I'm Jennifer Robinson, and I'm the aquarist. We'll be back in a few moments.
Hi, this is Geddes from the Cayman Turtle Conservation Education Center.
Hi, this is Shona from the Cayman Turtle Conservation and Education Center.
Hey, this is Wendy from the Cayman Turtle Conservation and Education Center.
We're inviting you to our new show.
Welcome to Cayman Turtle Center.
A day of fun and adventure awaits at Cayman Turtle Center Island Wildlife Encounter. Swim and snorkel alongside sea turtles and other marine life. Meet tropical birds in the aviary, ride our turtle twister water slide, or simply relax by the lagoon. Plan your adventure today.
Visit us online at www.turtle.ky.
Did you know that turtles play an important role in ocean ecosystems? Turtles maintain healthy seagrass beds and coral reefs, providing key habitat for other marine life and helping to balance marine food webs and nutrient cycling. Learn more about our turtle friends at the Cayman Turtle Center.
Hello, my name is Coco. I'm a Cayman parrot at the Cayman Turtle Center. I was rescued and love my home here. Did you know our human friends at the center breed and raise Cayman parrots, the national bird of the Cayman Islands, then release them to live in the wild? Come visit me and my bird friends at Cayman Turtle Center.
Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Green Scene on Bobo 89.1 FM. My name is Shona McGill, and I am one of the Education Programs Officers at Cayman Turtle Center. And with me today is Geddes Hislop, the Curator of Terrestrial Animals and Education Programs at Cayman Turtle Center. And right now we're going to dive into some of our successes. As we touched upon, we are coming up on celebrating 55 years being involved with green sea turtle conservation here in the Cayman Islands, and we are proud to have a few successes, one of which being the first place to successfully breed Kemp's Ridleys and re-release them back into Mexico, one of the rarest sea turtles in the world. But another one is helping to improve the wild sea turtle population here in the Cayman Islands.
Yeah, that was a conclusion of a Darwin Plus Initiative funded study that started from 2016 and concluded in 2018. And basically what it did, that study was compare the DNA of our breeder turtles at the Turtle Center to the wild nesting sea turtle population in the green sea turtle population in the Cayman Islands. And the results of the study were astounding because the whole idea was to see what impact our releases were having, because it's very difficult to track these turtles once you release them, because they get out into the wide blue ocean. We knew that some were coming back through some of the tagging that we were doing, but DNA is great because tags will fall off or malfunction or something, but DNA is DNA. It stays with you. And what they found was that 90% of the nesting population, green sea turtle population in Grand Cayman, can be traced back to our program at the center. And not just that, I think 76, I believe, % of the population in the sister islands can also be traced back to our program because we released turtles in all 3 islands. And that was amazing. That gave us a big morale boost because that kind of success is unprecedented. Any other program that I know of, that I personally know of, so it means that we're doing the right thing. And with a slow maturing animal like sea turtles that take a long time to get their thing going, it took us 50 years or so, more years to get there. But now we know the program is definitely working.
Yeah, you love a really good quote that says conservation success can take decades.
Yeah, that was Dr. Carl Jones from the Dorella Wildlife Trust in the Jersey Islands. And that was pretty inspiring because I heard him speak, and he talked about all the species that they work with, species that are literally on the brink, like the last 2 of this and all that kind of stuff. And he just said that conservation work, it takes a long time. It takes decades, because there's so many factors involved. It doesn't happen like in a movie in an hour. It takes years of work and dedication. But in our case, it did, but the results speak for themselves.
They definitely do. I mean, I've been blessed to work at the center for almost 7 years now. You, quite a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think it's about 15 years now.
So, all of the animals we work with at the center are really incredible, but obviously working with such a charismatic marine species like the green sea turtle, it just does warm your heart a little bit, and being so directly involved with the conservation programs that we are as well. But some of my favorite things about working with the sea turtles at the center are just being involved with some of the research programs that we carry out there. I mean, we're both scientists at heart, and that is how we describe ourselves, but we did a study in collaboration with Upwell Sea Turtles, and we took quite a lot of head-started turtles out and released them into or far past the North Sound. And just getting out there and doing active research with satellite tagging these juvenile green sea turtles and seeing where they venture to was just such a great experience. Getting to attach the satellite tags, getting hands-on with that and learning that was pretty cool. And we also got to see dolphins on the day, which we did not have planned, which was very fun to see them jumping and swimming while we're there trying to release turtles. But the results of that and seeing where they travel to is just incredible to be a part of, for me anyway. So what would you say has been your favorite part about working with sea turtles?
Sea turtles was, the thing is to get to see them up close and see their, you learn a few things about them. One, they have personalities. People think they're just dumb reptiles. They definitely have personalities, individuals. We have the famous, probably the most famous sea turtle that we have at the park is Sparky, which is one of our largest and oldest females. She no longer produces eggs, but she was there at the beginning of the program when they were collecting turtles way back in the early 70s. And she is just iconic. You see her come up at feeding time. The tour guides like to point her out. But she is so big that when it's feeding time and she's coming for her food, it's like a Mack truck passing through a bunch of little Volkswagens. She just bumps everybody out of the way and charges for her food. Yeah. And then in our snorkeling lagoon, it's basically like a giant aquarium or an inland sea. You see the turtles doing their natural behavior. When they introduce the turtles into the lagoon for the first time, within a day or two, they're acting like wild turtles, coming straight off a tank into the sea. And it gives you an insight into what's happening when we release a turtle. Because people always sometimes ask us about that. These turtles, how do they survive? How do they know what to feed on? Well, they're instinctual learners. They have it in them, in their reptile brains. And people just, it's cool to see them because you realize that they have personalities. They're actually not stupid. They may be slow, but they're not stupid.
Not at all. I mean, the 3 turtles we have in our predator reef habitat have actually been, all in the lagoon too, have been trained to go to their own specific sections for food. The cage structure that if you've been swimming in our turtle lagoon, you might have seen towards the end by our predator reef habitat, the sea turtles in there have been specifically trained to go into there for their feedings. And that reduces all the fish from stealing their food because the fish can move a lot faster than the turtles can and will steal it. So they're smart enough to be trained where to go there. And if you haven't been to one of our predator reef feedings, the 3 juvenile green sea turtles we have in there are trained to go to a white square for their food. And they also have an auditory or sound signal that we're ready to offer them food. So we bang metal bolts together.
Yeah, like a dinner bell.
Yeah. And I know a few other turtles in other aquariums have been taught to go to stations and go to specific shapes like triangles and circles for their food. So they are very smart animals. And they do look different from one another too. If you have the time to learn them, like Sparky, you can easily identify her if you know what you're looking for. She has that large dome-shaped shell. She has that really massive head. She has her little squinty eyes as well, and no shapes on the back or no scales or scutes on the back of her shell because she's that old that she's completely smoothed over. But we also get asked a lot of questions from visitors at the center. So what are some of the common questions you get asked at the center about our turtles?
Yeah, well, that's interesting because people tend to ask the same thing. When you walk into the center, especially visitors for the first time, sometimes when I have the time, I'll just stand there and watch people come in and see their reaction, because they step in there and they see them. The first thing they say, "Oh my gosh, they're huge, they're massive." And looking into our breeding pond gives you an indication of what the European explorers must have thought when they first saw turtles here around the Cayman Islands, when they first saw how these huge animals swimming around in the waters around there. But some of the most common, the first question they ask is, how old are they? And that's an interesting question because it's hard to tell the age of a turtle just by looking at it. It's kind of like trying to age people.
Yeah.
But in our breeding pond, the standard answer is, well, they have to be at least 10 years old to be a breeder. But you can't tell the age just by looking at them. Another question we get is, how long can they stay under? Right, so we know that if you sit and listen to them, and actually I find it very relaxing. It's like mini whales blowing when they breathe. They breathe about roughly every 30 seconds to a minute as they swim around casually. And then when they dive, they can stay down for about half an hour when they're foraging. But here's a cool thing. When they sleep, they can sleep anywhere from 8 to 12 hours on one breath. Right? So one thing we know, that if a turtle is down at the bottom, most likely it's asleep. And there's an old story that one of the workers told, the longtime workers told me, that one turtle stayed down there for 3 days. I don't know how true that was, but he said when it came up, it was covered with algae.
That would be
because it just sat there. It just sat there and snoozed for so long. Some of the other things people ask us is, they ask us the usual things. What do they eat? How fast can they swim? People think of turtles as slow, but sea turtles are not slow. They can do like 35 miles an hour in a short burst. And then the last thing is, they usually ask us is, so what will happen if somebody fell in there? Interesting question. But from what we've seen when we do our turtle breeder roundup, the first things the turtles do is they scatter, they run away, they swim away from you. And then, being curious, they turn around and come back.
Very inquisitive animals.
It's kind of like, you kind of see the same thing with cattle. The first thing they run away and then they turn around and they come back. And in that sense, they could probably be dangerous because you have a 300 plus pound animal swimming at you at 15, 20 miles an hour. That's like a mini car crash.
Yeah.
So they're not aggressive in that sense, but yeah, just because of their size and weight, they can inadvertently cause you damage if you get too close to them.
I mean, the questions, we get at turtle releases, we get some of those same questions. How long do they hold their breath for? But other ones are, where will this turtle go? And honestly, we do not know. Once they enter the water, they can really go wherever they want, especially if they're a male turtle. But through previous studies, we know our turtles have traveled as far north as the Florida Keys and as far south as Venezuela. So the release programs are not just helping the wild turtle population here in the Cayman Islands, but also the wider Caribbean as well. And then my absolute favorite one to get is, will you miss the turtle? And when you say no, people are a little bit affronted at first, but you say it's not bittersweet. Yes, we've taken care of the animal if we're doing a head-started release, maybe 1 to 3 years. But we love to see them go out into the water. We like to see them go out and play the role they are meant to do as a keystone species out there. We want them to go out. We want their numbers to improve. So no, it's never really sad when we see the released turtles go. It's always beautiful, and we celebrate it more than anything.
Yeah, it starts never get old. Thing.
Now, we're privileged because we get to work with the lovely and majestic green sea turtle, but also all of the other species that we work with at the center. Smiley, our crocodile, Freddy and Buka, our nurse sharks, all our other fish, all of the birds in our aviary, including our parrots, like Coco and Rosie and Ralph. So someone who might be listening, who might like animals, they might be wondering how could they get into a career working with sea turtles? And I find this question really funny for me and you because we both have completely different paths in terms of this question. So I'll just start off first. When I was younger, I've always had a massive interest in animals. I would be the child that would collect snails, put them on her bed. Do not recommend that. My mom didn't like it very much. Or I would go out and find ponds filled with tadpoles and I would collect them and put them in a bucket because the pond was going to dry up with the heat, which is funny because now I'm petrified of frogs. But I always just had a massive love of animals, and my mom, thankfully, was really supportive of it. A lot of my gifts had to do with animal-related stuff. And I just sort of fostered that. I did volunteering at the Cayman Islands Humane Society, which I still love to do whenever I have the time. And I also did a few internships at a few of the veterinary practices here because I thought I wanted to be a vet. Turns out I didn't want to be a vet. I just wanted to work with animals in some way. And the people at school were really great in helping me find a program that might interest me. So I went off to university in the UK. I went to Anglia Ruskin University in Cambridge, and I studied animal behavior and welfare. So I didn't actually specialize in marine biology. I just looked at animals as a whole. But obviously, being someone born and raised in the Cayman Islands, marine biology is near and dear to your heart, especially if you like animals. And I came back here and thankfully got a position at Cayman Turtle Center and actually started as the aquarist there. So I was working a lot more with our fish at the center, especially our nurse sharks. They were my responsibility to take care of. And Freddy, the nurse shark there, still holds a massive place in my heart. He's my favorite shark there, biased completely. And him and his massive head do hold a really big place in my heart, very much so. And then I moved on and became the education programs officer and got a lot more hands-on with the turtle programs, which also, in addition to Freddy, hold a massive place in my heart too. But what was your path like to become in this field?
That was a little bit longer. But definitely to preface it, if you have a passion for wildlife and you're working here in the Cayman Islands, working with sea turtles, you don't especially if you're at the center, you don't necessarily have to specialize in sea turtles. But once you have a love for animals, and you have that, you get that program, you get that training, that biologist training, you can adapt. At the center, most of the biologists at the center are not necessarily turtle biologists either, because my degree is in wildlife biology, and I was kind of the same thing because I grew up in Trinidad. I love wildlife. I'm more of a landlubber, so. Yeah, snakes, frogs, worms, all kinds of stuff. Same thing. My mom always used to shake out my clothes before she put them in the wash, make sure I didn't have anything in there. But I studied wildlife biology at the University of Guelph in Ontario, Canada, and here in Cayman, ended up at the Turtle Center working with the terrestrial animals. But yeah, we're at the Turtle Center, so terrestrial turtles, same thing. It's not that different. So, but it's the closest I came to turtles before that was working with leatherbacks, but that was in the field. Yeah, and that's where I got a leatherback stand in my foot. You had to get up close and weigh them, measure them. Didn't try to weigh them, measuring it to weighing the leatherback, trying to stretch over a leatherback shell, which is roughly, I would say, about 5 feet wide. And getting too close to one. Yeah. And that's how you get the leatherback to stand on your foot.
So both of us completely different, but still slightly similar paths in that we always had a love for the animals and the environment and sort of fostered that. Went on to study that and study wildlife and sort of fell backwards into turtle conservation, but happily so. It's very fun to do. But one of my greatest pieces of advice for young people looking to maybe go into this field or animal science as a whole, even veterinary science, is to just get as much experience as possible. Get your hands on as many types of fields as you want to try to figure out what essentially you might want to do to find your passion. Because at the end of the day, you want to do something you love and something you enjoy. So go out, try to do as many internships as you can, as many volunteer programs as you can to just get that experience and figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, and that's why at the Turtle Center, especially in the animal programs department where we work, we try to give many opportunities to young budding scientists, Caymanians. Even sometimes we get some people from overseas, want to give them that experience because we want to make sure it's nice for them to have the opportunity and have the experience just like we did. We were lucky, and we want to, if somebody else if you can help encourage someone else, and it doesn't hurt us in any way, why not?
Yeah, and what are some of the ways someone could get involved, whether sponsoring or volunteering at the center, if they want to follow their passion and support of sea turtles?
Oh yeah, well definitely for World Sea Turtle Day and anytime with our releases, we always welcome sponsorships because their sponsorship funds help us with our programs, help fund our programs, and help us to do so much more. So we're always grateful for sponsors, and the community, especially the corporate community, have been really great with that. Private sponsors as well. Just visit our website, www.turtle.ky, or you can email us directly if you want, info@turtle.ky, and just in your subject line, just say whether you're looking for sponsorship, you want to volunteer. We always welcome volunteers, especially now, during the breeding season, because it's when you're working with animals, it can be a little bit unpredictable, which is it's fun and frustrating at the same time, but having some extra hands on deck is really great. And also for me personally, having new people and seeing them enjoy and learn and getting that oh wow moment, it just makes it work for us. Because sometimes we don't realize how cool it is, the things that we do, because we sort of take it for granted. But anytime we get a new intern, a new volunteer, and you see their faces light up, you realize it is actually pretty cool what we do.
It really is. Yeah, just seeing their enjoyment. It's the same thing at releases. Some people get really emotional at a turtle release. We did one recently, and I remember a few people coming up to me before saying they might cry. And I told them I completely understand. If I didn't work with turtles every single day, I probably would cry too. It is a beautiful experience seeing them go
I remember some cryers.
But it's not just us that can have an effect on turtle conservation. I mean, it is our job, and we try to also do it every single day in our lives. We try to be as conscious of the marine environment and sea turtles as possible. But the public can also help with turtle conservation as well.
Yeah, definitely, because conservation is everybody's business. Just like conservation of sea turtles is conservation of the whole ocean and all its areas and elements. We can't do it alone. We do as much as we can, but the whole idea is to, it's a community. Just like it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a whole community to make sure that conservation goes the way it's supposed to go. We do it by the choices we make every day. So one of the, I think we said earlier, one of the things that we encourage is building informed habits. So to reduce plastic pollution, just try 3 pieces of plastic a day. That's our mantra. To the center, 3 pieces of plastic a day. helps keep the plastic at bay. Well, it doesn't keep plastic completely at bay, but it will help. Yeah. But it builds also that sense of environmental consciousness. So that you see a piece of plastic, you just pick it up, and hopefully others will see you do the same, and it spreads by example.
Yeah, it's not even big things you have to do, just little tiny changes and habits, like buying a reusable water bottle as opposed to plastic bottles. Yeah. Using a reusable shopping bag too.
Yeah, turning on the fan and turn on the AC a bit. Reduce it. Try using a little less water. You don't have to. You don't have to turn the tap on full blast just to wash one item. Because all these little things make a difference. Because the long chain is that water or that electricity runs that water pump or that AC, and that electricity is produced using fossil fuels.
Exactly.
Which produces pollution, which ends up in the ocean, which adds to acidification and ocean pollution.
Yeah, so just these very tiny changes that honestly don't impact us that much, but will have a massive benefit to the world and the marine environment, can cause, as I always like to say, an ocean of change. We all have to do our part, and if we all do it, we will cause that change. It might take a bit of time, but we'll get there.
Yeah, and that's what World Sea Turtle Day is about.
Exactly.
Ocean conservation.
Exactly. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today, guys. Thank you for helping us continue to celebrate World Sea Turtle Day, one we try to celebrate every day anyway. But hopefully you guys enjoyed it, liked learning about the sea turtles. So coming up at Cayman Turtle Center, I'm excited to announce that our kids camp, Camp Shelby with 2 L's, is back for the summer. To find out more, you can register at www.campshelby.com. Remember, Shelby has 2 L's. We are also offering our evening hatchling release series again this year, and we're offering a very special experience every single Thursday this month. So if you would like to experience one of our nighttime hatchling releases, please reach out and email info@turtle.ky for more information, or visit any of our social media pages as well. And you can follow us on social media for any more updates on any other happenings at the center. But I'm afraid that brings us to the end. But you can join us every single Saturday at 11 a.m. on Bobo 89.1 FM for The Green Scene, where we'll talk to you all about conservation and many of the species that live here in the Cayman Islands. So thank you for joining us today, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to see you again soon.